They say the truth will set you free, but they don't tell you it will first strip you bare. I was 24 years old, a Buddhist novice in Cambodia, when I stumbled upon a Bible hidden in my monastery. I wasn't looking for it. I wasn't looking for him. But 2 verses, just 2, shatter the foundation of everything I believe about God, karma, and salvation. What I'm about to tell you cost me my family, my community, and my identity. But it gave me something I never had, hope that didn't depend on me. My name is Sophal. I was born in a village in Cambodian province, Cambodia, in the shadow of temples older than my family's memory. My grandmother, Neri, raised me on stories of the Buddha, the Dharma, the endless wheel of suffering and rebirth. She taught me to fold my hands in prayer, to offer lotus flowers at dawn, to believe that if I lived well enough, long enough, purely enough, I might one day escape this cycle. I believed her. I wore the saffron robe. I studied under monk Bible. I swept the temple floors and chanted the sutras and watched the incense curl toward heaven, carrying prayers I hoped something was listening to. But when my grandmother fell ill and my prayers turned to silence and a forbidden book appeared in a place I thought was holy, everything changed. I didn't open that book looking for answers. I opened it out of curiosity, maybe desperation. I read 2 verses, just 2. And in that moment, the weight I had carried my entire life, the weight of earning, striving, performing, lifted. I wept, not because I understood everything, but because for the first time, I felt love without having to deserve it. If you've ever felt like you're earning your way to God, or if you wonder whether grace is real, stay with me. What I'm about to share might be the answer you've been searching for. Consider subscribing, because this story almost stay hidden and someone you know might need to hear it. The unmarked road to the temple was red clay and dust. I walked it every morning before dawn, barefoot, my saffron robe folded carefully across my shoulder. The air smelled of rain that hadn't fallen yet, of earth and incense, and the faint sweetness of frangipani blossoms left at the shrine the night before. I was 24 years old, a novice, not yet a full monk, but close enough that the village elders nodded when I passed, and the children pressed their palms together in respect. This was the life my grandmother had prayed for me. Neri, my grandmother, she was the one who brought me to the temple when I was 7 years old. My parents were farmers, too poor to give me much of an education, but she believed that if I studied the Dharma, if I learned to live with discipline and detachment, I could break the cycle of suffering that had gripped our family for generations. She would say, Sophal, we are born into debt. Karma from past life. You must pay back with merit, with good deeds, with purity. Only then will you be free. I believe her. I believe that every prayer I chanted, every lotus flower I placed at the feet of the Buddha statue, every hour I spent in meditation was a payment toward a debt I couldn't see but felt in my bones. The temple was small. Wooden beams, a tile roof that leaked during the monsoon, walls painted in fading gold and red. Inside, the Buddha sat in silence, his stone face serene, his eyes half closed. I used to stare at him for hours, waiting for something, a sign, a word, a flicker of acknowledgement. Nothing ever came, but I told myself that was the point. Detachment, non-attachment. The goal was not to seek comfort from the divine, but to transcend the need for it altogether. Still, I wondered. Late at night, when the other novices were asleep and the temple was dark except for the glow of oil lamps, I would sit in front of that statue and whisper questions I was too afraid to ask aloud. Are you listening? Do you see me? Is there an end to this? Silence. Always silence. Monk Bible, my teacher, was a kind man, thin, with a shaved head and eyes that seemed to carry a sadness he never spoke about. He taught me the sutras, corrected my posture during meditation, reminded me that suffering was caused by desire and that the path to enlightenment was the elimination of the self. Let go, Sophal, he would say. Let go of your attachment. Let go of your ego. Let go of your need to be seen. I tried. I fasted. I meditated until my legs went numb. I gave away what little I had. I spoke less, smiled less, wanted less. But the weight never lifted. If anything, it grew heavier. Because the more I tried to earn my freedom, the more I realized I was failing. Every selfish thought, every moment of anger or pride or fear was another mark against me, another life I would have to live, another cycle I would have to endure. I was drowning in my own inadequacy. And then my grandmother got sick. It started with a cough. Nothing serious, we thought. But within 2 weeks, she couldn't get out of bed. Her skin turned gray. Her breathing became shallow. The village healer came, burned herbs, said prayers, but nothing helped. I went to the temple every day and prayed for her. I offered lotus flowers. I chanted the sutras. I begged the Buddha, the spirits, the ancestors, anyone who might be listening, to spare her. She had given her life to the Dharma. She had raised me in the temple. She had lived with more discipline and devotion than anyone I knew. If anyone deserved mercy, it was her. But the prayers went unanswered. One evening, I sat beside her on the mat in our small wooden house. She was so frail, so small. Her hand in mine felt like paper. She looked at me with tired eyes and whispered, "Sophal, have I done enough?" I didn't know what to say. "I've tried to live well," she said. "I've tried to earn merit, but I don't know if it's enough. I don't know what waits for me." I wanted to comfort her. I wanted to tell her that yes, of course, she had done enough, that she would be reborn into a better life, that her suffering was almost over. But I couldn't, because I didn't believe it. I didn't know if any of us had done enough. I walked back to the temple that night along the unmarked road, and for the first time in my life, I felt anger. Not at my grandmother, not at the sickness, at the silence, at the stone face of the Buddha that never answered, at the endless wheel of karma that demanded payment but never promised peace, at a system that required perfection but offered no grace. I stood in front of the statue that night, my fists clenched, my heart pounding, and I whispered, "If you are real, if you are listening, show me, please. Show me there is more than this." Nothing, just the flicker of oil lamps and the smell of incense and the cold, unchanging face of stone. I went to bed that night with a hollow ache in my chest. I didn't know that in 3 days, everything I believed would be undone. I didn't know that a book I had been taught to fear would find its way into my hands. I didn't know that 2 sentences, just 2, would tear down the walls I had built around my soul and let the light in. But that night, as I lay on my mat in the temple, I had the dream again. The dream I had been having for months. A man in white standing on a road I didn't recognize. His face was kind. His eyes were full of something I didn't have a word for. He reached out his hand and he said, "My name, Sophal." I woke up with tears on my face. The next morning, I woke before dawn and walked the unmarked road to the temple as I always did. But something felt different. The air was heavier. The sky was the color of ash. My hands trembled as I folded my saffron robe and draped it over my shoulders. I couldn't stop thinking about the dream. The man in white, his hand reaching toward me, the way he said my name, not like a teacher correcting a student, but like someone who knew me, who saw me. I shook my head, tried to push it away. Dreams were distractions, attachments. Monk Weibo had taught me that. The mind creates illusions to keep us bound to desire, to ego, to the false self. But this didn't feel like an illusion. It felt like a memory of something I hadn't lived yet. When I arrived at the temple, Monk Weibo was already awake, sweeping the courtyard. He looked up at me, and for a moment, I thought I saw something in his eyes, concern maybe, or fear. "You look troubled, Sophal," he said quietly. I nodded. "My grandmother is dying." He set the broom down and placed a hand on my shoulder. "We are all dying, Sophal. That is the nature of existence. Suffering is inevitable. The only freedom is to let go." I wanted to believe him, but letting go felt like giving up. "Come," he said, "help me prepare the offerings." We worked in silence, arranging lotus flowers on the altar, lighting incense, pouring water into small brass bowls. The ritual was familiar, comforting in its repetition. But my heart wasn't in it. I kept glancing at the Buddha statue, waiting for something, anything. Still nothing. It was mid-morning when the foreigners arrived. Two of them, a man and a woman, both Western, both wearing simple clothes and carrying large bags. They spoke broken Khmer, smiling too much, asking if they could offer assistance to the village. Aid workers, I assume. We saw them occasionally. They brought medicine, taught hygiene, built wells. The village elders tolerate them because they were useful, but we were always cautious. Some of them came with hidden agendas, trying to convert us, to pull us away from our traditions. Monk Weibo greeted them politely, but I could see the tension in his jaw. They stayed for less than an hour, handing out small packets of medicine and water purification tablets. The woman smiled at me as they prepared to leave, and then she reached into her bag and pulled out a small book. It was worn, the cover faded, the pages dog-eared. She held it out toward Monk Weibo. "For you," she said in halting Khmer, "a gift, it brings hope." I saw his face change. He didn't take it at first. He just stared at it, his expression unreadable. The woman set it down gently on the steps of the temple and bowed her head. Then they left. I looked at the book. Even from a distance, I knew what it was. A Bible. I had been warned about it my entire life. The book of the Christians, the foreigners, religion, a threat to the Dharma, to our way of life, to the ancestors. Monk Weibo stood frozen, staring at it like it was a snake coil on the temple steps. "Should I burn it?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. Finally, he bent down, picked it up, and tucked it under his arm. "No," he said quietly, "I'll take care of it." I expected him to throw it away, to bury it, or tear it apart, or toss it into the river. But he didn't. He carried it inside. And he hid it. I know, because I saw him later that evening, slipping it beneath a stack of old cloths in the storage room behind the altar. He didn't see me watching. He closed the door carefully, his hand shaking. Why would he keep it? The question gnawed at me for the rest of the day. That night, I went to visit my grandmother again. She was worse. Her breathing was labored, her eyes unfocused. My mother sat beside her, weeping quietly. I knelt down and took her hand. "Grandmother," I whispered, "I'm still praying for you." She turned her head slightly, her lips moving, but no sound came out. I stayed with her until midnight, then walked back to the temple in the dark. The unmarked road felt longer that night. The stars were hidden behind clouds. The air smelled like rain. When I reached the temple, everyone was asleep. I should have gone to bed, but I couldn't stop thinking about the book. Why did Monk Bible keep it? What was he afraid of? I moved quietly through the temple, past the sleeping novices, past the altar where the oil lamp still flickered. I opened the door to the storage room, and I found it. The Bible. I held it in my hands, my heart pounding so loud I was sure someone would hear. It was heavier than I expected. The cover was soft, worn smooth by years of handling. Inside, the pages were thin, covered in Khmer script. I told myself I would just look, just see what the foreigners believe, just understand why Monk Bible had hidden it instead of destroying it. I opened it at random. My eyes fell on a page near the middle, and I began to read. The words were strange, direct, not like the sutras, which were layered and circular and require years of study to understand. These words were simple, clear, and they pierced me. I read one verse, then another, and my hands began to shake because what I was reading, it wasn't philosophy, it wasn't a system, it wasn't a path to earn my way to freedom. It was a person speaking, claiming to be the way, not a way. The way. I closed the book quickly, my breath coming fast, my chest tight. I looked around, half expecting someone to appear, to catch me, to accuse me, but I was alone. I slipped the Bible back under the cloth and left the storage room, my mind spinning. I lay on my mat that night, staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. The two verses I had read played over and over in my mind. I didn't understand them, but I felt them. Like a door I didn't know existed had just been opened, and I was standing on the threshold, terrified to step through. That night, I had the dream again. The man in white, the road, his hand reaching toward me. But this time, he spoke not just my name. He said, "Come, do it there." I woke up gasping, my face wet with tears. And I knew I couldn't ignore this anymore. Something was calling me. Someone was calling me, and I had to find out who. I didn't go back to the storage room the next day. I was too afraid. Afraid of what I had read, afraid of what it meant, afraid of the way those two verses had lodged themselves in my chest like a splinter I couldn't remove. I tried to focus on my duties, sweeping the courtyard, preparing the offerings, chanting the morning sutras with the other novices. But my mind was elsewhere. I kept seeing the words on the page. I kept hearing the voice from the dream. Come. Come where? Come to what? I had spent my entire life trying to go somewhere toward enlightenment, toward freedom, toward escape from the wheel of suffering. But it always felt like walking toward a horizon that moved farther away the closer I got. This was different. This wasn't about going. It was about being called. By the afternoon, I couldn't take it anymore. I told Monk Vibo I needed time alone to meditate. He nodded, distracted, his eyes distant. He had been quieter than usual since the foreigners left the Bible. I wondered if he had read it too. If he was wrestling with the same questions. But I didn't ask. I walked the unmarked road away from the temple into the forest where we sometimes went to sit in silence. There was a clearing there beneath an old banyan tree where the light filtered through the leaf in soft golden shafts. I sat down, crossed my legs, closed my eyes. I tried to meditate the way I had been taught. Empty the mind, observe the breath, let go of attachment. But I couldn't, because I wasn't empty. I was full of question, full of longing, full of a strange, aching hope I didn't know what to do with. I opened my eyes and looked up at the sky through the branches. And I did something I had never done before. I prayed not to the Buddha, not to the spirits, not to the ancestor. I prayed to the one I had read about, the one who claimed to be the way, the truth, the life. I didn't know if he was real. I didn't know if he could hear me, but I prayed anyway. If you are real, I whispered, my voice breaking. If you are listening, show me. I need to know. I need to know if there is hope that doesn't depend on me. If there is love that I don't have to earn. If there is a way out of this that I didn't create. I waited. The forest was silent except for the rustle of leaves and the distant call of a bird. And then something shifted. I don't know how else to describe it. The air around me grew still. The light seemed to brighten, though the sun hadn't moved. My chest felt warm, like something inside me was waking up after a long sleep. And then I saw him, not with my physical eyes, but I saw him, the man in white. He was standing in front of me just a few feet away, his face clearer than it had ever been in the dreams. His eyes were full of kindness and something else, something I had never seen before. Not pity, not judgment, but love. Pure, unearned, overwhelming love. I couldn't move, I couldn't speak. He reached out his hand, just like in a dream. And he said, Sophal, I have been calling you. My throat tightened. Tears spilled down my face. I don't understand, I whispered. I don't know who you are. He smiled, not with arrogance, not with distance, with tenderness. You will, he said, but first you must let go. Let go of what? I asked, my voice trembling. The rope, he said, the weight, the debt you think you owe. You cannot carry it and walk with me. I looked down at my saffron robe, the one I had worn with pride, the one that marked me as devoted, as disciplined, as worthy. And for the first time, I saw it for what it was. A costume, a chain, a symbol of a system that demanded everything and promised nothing. I've tried so hard, I said, my voice breaking. I've tried to be good, to earn my way, to pay the debt. But it's never enough. I'm never enough. He knelt down in front of me, his eyes level with mine. You were never meant to be enough on your own, he said. That's why I came. I didn't understand, but I felt it. The weight I had carried my entire life, the crushing, suffocating weight of karma, of merit, of endless striving, began to lift. Not because I had done anything, but because he was taking it. I wept. I wept like a child, like someone who had been lost in the dark for years and had finally seen the light. Who are you? I whispered. He stood, his hand still extended toward me. I am the way, Sophal, the truth, the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Those were the same word I had read in the Bible. But now they weren't just words on a page. They were a person standing in front of me, calling my name. I reached out my hand and the vision faded. I was alone in the clearing again, the sunlight filtering through the banyan tree, the forest quiet around me. But I wasn't the same. Something inside me had broken open. Something inside me had been set free. I stood up, my legs shaking, and looked down at the saffron robe draped over my body. It felt heavy now, foreign, like it didn't belong to me anymore. I walked back to the temple in a daze, my mind spinning, my heart pounding. I didn't know what to do with what I had just experienced. I didn't know how to explain it. I didn't even know if it was real or if I had lost my mind. But I knew one thing. I had to go back to that Bible. I had to read those verses again. I had to understand. That night, after everyone was asleep, I crept back into the storage room. I found the Bible, pulled it out, and opened it to the place I had marked in my memory. And I read the 2 verses again, slowly, carefully, letting every word sink in. I didn't just read them. I felt them like they were written for me, like they had been waiting for me my entire life. I took a piece of ash from the incense bowl nearby and marked the verses with my finger, a small smudge in the margin. I wanted to remember. I wanted proof that this moment was real, that I wasn't imagining it. I closed the Bible and held it against my chest, my heart racing. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know if I had the courage to follow where this was leading, but I knew I couldn't go back. The door had been opened and I was standing on the other side. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on my mat in the temple, staring at the ceiling, the 2 verses running through my mind like a river I couldn't dam. Over and over, word by word. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. For by grace you have been saved through faith, not of works, lest anyone should boast. Grace? I had never heard that word before. Not in the sutras, not in the teachings of the Buddha, not in the prayers my grandmother had whispered over me as a child. We had karma, we had merit, we had the endless cycle of cause and effect, action and consequence, debt and payment. But grace was something else entirely. Grace was unearned, undeserved, free, and that terrified me. Because if salvation was free, if it didn't depend on my effort, my discipline, my purity, then everything I had built my life on was a lie. Every prayer I had chanted, Every lotus flower I had offered, every hour I had spent in meditation, trying to empty myself, trying to become good enough, all of it meaningless. Unless there was another way, unless the man in white was telling the truth. I sat up, my chest tight, my hands trembling. I had to know. I had to understand. I slipped out of the temple quietly, careful not to wake the other novices, and walked the unmarked road in the dark. The moon was hidden behind cloud. The air was cool and damp. My bare feet pressed into the red clay, and I felt every stone, every root, every uneven patch of earth. This road, I had walked it 1,000 times. But tonight, it felt different, like I was walking towards something, or away from something. I didn't know which. I reached the clearing beneath the banyan tree and sat down in the same spot where I had seen the vision. I closed my eyes and I prayed again. Please, I whispered, I need to understand. I need to know who you are. I need to know if this is real or if I'm losing my mind. The forest was silent, no vision this time, no voice, just the sound of my own breathing and the rustle of leaves in the wind. I waited and waited, and then I felt it, not a voice I could hear with my ears, but a voice I could feel in my chest. Deep, steady, certain. I am the way, Sophal. I opened my eyes, my heart pounding. The way to what? I whispered aloud. To the Father, to life, to peace, to the end of striving. Tears fill my eyes, but I don't know how. I said, my voice breaking. I don't know how to follow you. I don't know what it means. I don't even know your name. The voice was gentle, patient. You already know my name. You read it, you mark it with ash. I thought back to the Bible, to the verses I had read. And then I remember the name that appeared over and over in the pages I had skimmed. Jesus, Jesus, I whispered. And the moment I said it, something shifted inside me. Like a lock turning, like a door opening, like light flooding into a room that had been dark for too long. I wept, not out of sadness, out of relief, because for the first time in my life, I wasn't alone. I wasn't striving. I wasn't earning. I was being loved, and I didn't have to do anything to deserve it. I sat there in the clearing for hours, weeping, praying, listening, and slowly, piece by piece, the truth began to settle into my soul. I had been trying to save myself, but I couldn't. I had been trying to pay a debt I didn't have the currency for, but someone else had already paid it. I had been trying to reach God through my own effort, but God had reached down to me through Jesus, through grace, through love I didn't earn and couldn't lose. When I finally stood up and walked back to the temple, the sky was beginning to lighten, dawn was coming, but I felt like I was walking in a different world. Everything looked the same. The unmarked road, the temple, the saffron robe folded on my mat, but I was different. I couldn't go back to the way things were. I couldn't pretend I didn't know. I couldn't keep offering lotus flowers to a statue that couldn't hear me when I had met the living God who called me by name. But I was terrified because I knew what this meant. If I follow Jesus, I would lose everything. My place in the temple, my identity as a novice, my family's respect, my grandmother dream for me. The village would turn against me. The elder would call me a traitor. My father would disown me. I would be alone. Or so I thought. Over the next few days, I wrestled with the decision. I went through the motions. I chanted sutras. I swept the floors. I prepared the offerings. But my heart wasn't in it. Every time I placed the lotus flower at the feet of the Buddha, I thought of the man in white. Every time I bowed before the statue, I remember the voice that said, I am the way. Every time I tied the saffron robe around my body, I felt the weight of it and the weight of the choice I had to make. One evening, I was sitting alone in the temple courtyard, watching the sun set, when Monk Vibo approached me. He sat down beside me, silent for a long moment. Then he said, "You've been different so far." I didn't answer. "You've been distracted, distant, like your mind is somewhere else." I looked at him, and for the first time, I saw the sadness in his eyes clearly. "I read it," I said quietly. He stiffened. "The Bible," I continued. "I found it. I read it." He closed his eye, his jaw tight. I told myself I wouldn't. He said, his voice barely above a whisper. I told myself I would just keep it hidden, that I wouldn't look, that I wouldn't let it affect me. "But Judy," I said. He nodded slowly. I did. We sat in silence for a long time. Finally, I asked, "Do you believe it?" He didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was thick with emotion. "I don't know," he said. "I want to, but I'm afraid. Afraid of what it would cost. Afraid of what people would say. Afraid of losing everything I built my life on." I understood, because I was afraid too. "But what if it's true?" I asked. "What if there really is a way that doesn't depend on us? What if grace is real?" He looked at me, his eyes wet. "Then we've been walking the wrong road our entire lives," he said. I nodded. "Yes," I said, "we have." He stood up slowly, his hands shaking. "I can't, Sophal," he said. "I can't walk away. I'm too old, too tired, too afraid." He looked at me one last time. "But you're young. You still have time. If you believe it, don't let fear stop you." But he walked away, his shoulders slumped, his saffron robe dragging in the dust. And I sat there, alone, watching the last light fade from the sky. I knew what I had to do, but knowing and doing are two different things. That night, I went back to the storage room one last time. I took the Bible. I held it in my hand, feeling the weight of it, the worn cover, the thin pages marked with ash, and I made my choice. I would follow Jesus, no matter the cost, no matter what I lost, because I had found something worth losing everything for. I had found the way. The next morning, I didn't put on the saffron robe. I folded it carefully, smoothed the creases, and set it on the mat where I had slept for the past 3 years. It felt like folding up a life I no longer belonged to. My hand was steady, but my heart was racing. I dressed in the simple clothes I had worn before I became a novice. A faded shirt, loose trousers, nothing that marked me as holy or set apart. I looked like everyone else now, and that terrified me, because for so long, the robe had been my identity, my purpose, my proof that I was trying, that I was worthy, that I matter. Without it, I was just Sophal, a farmer's son, a boy from a village no one had heard of, a man with no merit, no status, no claim to enlightenment. But I had something else now. I had grace. I tucked the Bible under my arm and walked out of the temple. The other novices were already awake, preparing for morning prayer. They stared at me as I passed, confusion and concern on their faces. One of them called out, "Sophal, where is your robe?" I didn't answer. I just kept walking down the step, across the courtyard, onto the unmarked road. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stay. I walked for hours, the Bible pressed against my chest, my mind spinning with fear and hope and a strange, wild freedom I had never felt before. I thought about my grandmother. She was still sick, still dying. I had to see her. I had to tell her, even if she didn't understand, even if it broke her heart. I reached our small wooden house by midday. My mother was outside washing clothes in a basin. She looked up when she saw me, her face lighting up for a moment, and then falling when she saw what I was wearing. "Sophal," she said, standing quickly. "Where is your robe? What happened?" I swallowed hard. "I need to see grandmother," I said. She stared at me, her eyes searching my face. "What have you done?" she whispered. "Please, mother, let me see her." She stepped aside, her expression tight with worry, and I walked into the house. My grandmother was lying on the same mat, her breathing shallow, her skin pale, but her eyes were open. She turned her head when she heard me enter, and a faint smile crossed her lips. "Sophal," she whispered, "you came." I knelt beside her and took her hand. "Grandmother," I said, my voice shaking, "I need to tell you something." "Dear," she nodded weakly. I took a deep breath. "I've been reading a book," I said. "A book the foreigners left at the temple. It's called the Bible." Her smile faded. "Sophal, please just listen," I said. "I read 2 verses, just 2, and they changed everything. They told me that I don't have to earn my way to God, that I can't, that someone else already paid the debt. His name is Jesus. And he loved me not because of what I'd done, but because of who he is." Tears filled her eyes. "Sophal, no," she whispered. You can't turn away from the Dharma. You can't abandon the ancestor. You'll be lost. You'll be cursed." "I'm not lost, grandmother," I say, my own tears falling now. "For the first time in my life, I'm found." She closed her eyes, her hand trembling in mine. "You asked me if you had done enough," I say, "and I didn't know how to answer you. But now I do. You don't have to do enough. None of us can. That's why Jesus came. To do what we couldn't, to give us what we don't deserve. Grace, grandmother, is called grace." She was silent for a long time. Then, in a voice so soft I almost didn't hear it, she said, "Read it to me." I blinked, surprised. "What?" "The verses," she said. "The one that changed you. Read them to me." My hands shook as I opened the Bible to the pages I had marked with ash, and I read, Jesus say, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one come to the Father except through me." I paused, my voice breaking. And this one, for by grace you have been saved through faith, and that not of yourselves. It is the gift of God, not of works, lest anyone should boast. Silence. My grandmother's eyes were closed, but tears were streaming down her face. A gift, she whispered, not of works. Yes, I said. She opened her eyes and looked at me, and I saw something I had never seen before. Herb, do you think, she began, her voice faltering, do you think it's too late for me? I squeezed her hand. No, grandmother, it's never too late. That's the whole point. It's not about how much time you have left. It's about saying yes to him, to grace. She closed her eyes again, and her lip moved in a whisper I couldn't hear. I don't know if it was a prayer, but I think it was. I stayed with her for the rest of the afternoon, reading more from the Bible, answering her questions as best I could. And when I finally left, she was sleeping peacefully, more peacefully than I had seen her in weeks. But the peace didn't last long. My father was waiting for me outside. His face was hard. His fists were clenched. What have you done? He said, his voice low and dangerous. Father, You've disgraced us, he said. You've abandoned the temple. You've turned your back on the Buddha, on the ancestors, on everything we believe. I haven't turned my back on truth, I said. I found it. He stepped closer, his eyes blazing. You found lies, he said. Foreign lies. And you've brought shame on this family. Father, please. No, he said, cutting me off. You have a choice, Sophal. You renounce this madness, and you return to the temple. Or you leave, and you never come back. The words hit me like a blow to the chest. I looked at my mother, standing in the doorway, her face pale, her hands covering her mouth. Look at the house where I had grown up, the village where I had spent my entire life, the people I loved, and I knew what I had to do. I can't renounce it, Father. I said, my voice steady despite the tears in my eye. I can't go back to the way things were. I've met Jesus, and I can't pretend I haven't. His face twisted with anger and pain. Then, you are no longer my son, he said. The words hung in the air like a curse. My mother sobbed, and I turned and walked away, down the path, past the neighbors who stared, past the temple where monk Bibo stood in the doorway, watching me go, his face filled with sorrow, onto the unmarked road. But this time, I wasn't walking toward the temple. I was walking away from it, and I didn't know where I was going. I walked until my legs ached and the sun began to set. I sat down on the side of the road, the Bible in my lap, and I wept. I had lost everything: my family, my home, my identity, my place in the world. But even as I wept, I felt it. The presence, the peace, the quiet, steady voice that said, you are not alone. I look up at the sky, the star beginning to appear, and I whisper, I trust you. I don't know where I'm going, but I trust you. And in that moment, I felt the weight lift again. Not the weight of the road, but the weight of fear. Because I realized something. I hadn't lost everything. I had gained everything. I had gained the one thing that mattered. I had gained Jesus. And that was enough. I spent that first night under the star, curled up on the side of the road with the Bible as my pillow. I had nowhere else to go. No temple to return to, no family to take me in, no plan, no money, no certainty of what tomorrow would bring. But I wasn't afraid. Not the way I thought I would be, because I wasn't alone. I could feel it, the presence of Jesus, as real as the ground beneath me, as close as my own breath. And I slept deeply, peacefully. For the first time in years, when I woke the next morning, the sun was already high, and I heard voices nearby. I sat up, disoriented, and saw a small group of people gathered under a tree a short distance away. They were singing quietly, reverently, their hands raised, their faces full of something I recognize now. Joy. I stood and walked toward them, the Bible still tucked under my arm. One of them noticed me and smiled. An older man, thin and weathered, with kind eyes. "Brother," he said in Khmer, "are you lost?" I almost laughed. I don't know," I said. "Maybe, or maybe I've just been found." He looked at the Bible in my hand, and his smile widened. "You're a believer," he said. I nodded, the word still strange on my tongue. "Yes," I said, "I think I am." He clasped my shoulder. "Then you're not lost, brother. You're home." His name was Pastor Dara. He led a small underground community of Christians in the region. Farmers, laborers, former Buddhists like me who had encountered Jesus and couldn't turn back. They met in secret, in homes and fields and forests, because the village elders and local authorities didn't approve. Christianity was tolerated in the cities, but here in a rural area it was seen as a threat, a foreign infection, a betrayal of tradition. But they met anyway, and they welcomed me. Pastor Dara took me to his home, a small wooden house on the edge of a neighboring village. His wife fed me rice and fish, and for the first time in days, I felt the knot in my stomach loosen. "Tell me your story," Pastor Dara said, as we sat together that evening. So I did. I told him about my grandmother, about the temple, about the Bible that monk Vibo had hidden, about the 2 verses that had undone me, about the vision of the man in white, about the voice that called my name, about the choice I had made, and the cost. He listened without interrupting, his eyes glistening with tears. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Sophal, do you know what you've been given?" I shook my head. "A testimony," he said. "A story of grace that others need to hear. You think you've lost everything, but God has given you something far more valuable. He's given you a message, and He's calling you to share it." I didn't understand at first. "I don't know how to share it," I said. "I don't know enough. I've only read a few pages of the Bible. I don't know the theology, the doctrines, He held up a hand, smiling. "You don't need to know everything so far. You just need to know Jesus. And you do. You met Him, you heard His voice, you felt His love. That's enough. That's more than enough." Over the next few weeks, Pastor Dara taught me, not in a classroom, not with lectures or textbook, but through the Gospels. We read them together, slowly, carefully, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, and with every page, I saw him more clearly. Jesus, the man in white, the one who called my name. I read about his birth, his life, his teachings. I read about the miracle, the healings, the way he touched the untouchable and loved the unlovable. I read about his death and his resurrection, and I wept because I understood now. He hadn't just paid a debt. He had defeated death itself. He had opened the way, not just to a better life, but to eternal life. And he had done it for me, for everyone, for anyone who would believe. Pastor Dara also taught me to pray, not the rote prayers I had chanted in the temple, the same words repeated over and over until they lost all meaning, but real prayer, conversation, talking to Jesus like he was right there in the room, because he was listening for his voice, trusting his guidance, surrendering my will to his. It was terrifying at first, and then it became the most natural thing in the world. One evening, Pastor Dara said, "Sophal, I think it's time." "Time for what?" I asked. "Time for you to share your testimony." My stomach dropped. I don't think I'm ready." "You never feel ready," he said gently, "but the Holy Spirit will give you the words. Trust him." The next Sunday, the community gathered in a small clearing in the forest, hidden from the main road. There were maybe 20 people there, farmers, mothers, children, a few former monks and temple workers like me. Pastor Dara stood and welcomed everyone, and then he looked at me. "We have a new brother with us," he said, "and he has a story to share. Sophal, will you come?" My legs felt like water as I stood. I walked to the front, my heart pounding, my hands shaking. I looked at the faces staring back at me, expectant, curious, kind, and I opened my mouth. At first, nothing came out, and then the words began to flow. I told them about the temple, about the saffron robe, about the way of trying to earn my way to freedom. I told them about my grandmother's question, "Have I done enough?" I told them about the Bible, about the 2 verses. I told them about the vision, about the voice, about the choice, and I told them about grace. I spent my whole life trying to be good enough, I said, my voice breaking, but I never was, I never could be, and I was drowning in the weight of it. But then I met Jesus, and he didn't ask me to be good enough. He just asked me to believe, to trust, to receive the gift he was offering. And when I did, everything changed. I paused, tears streaming down my face. I lost my family, I lost my home, I lost everything I thought mattered, but I gained Jesus. And he is enough, he is more than enough. When I finished, the clearing was silent. And then, one by one, people began to weep. A woman in the back stood and said, "I needed to hear that. I've been afraid to tell my family. But if you can do it, maybe I can too." A man near the front said, "I've been carrying so much guilt, so much shame, but hearing your story, I feel like I can finally let it go." And an older man, his face lined with years of hardship, said quietly, "Thank you, brother. You've reminded me why I believe." After the gathering, Pastor Dara pulled me aside. "You have a gift, Sophal," he said. "God is calling you to this, to share the gospel, to shepherd his people. Have you ever thought about becoming a pastor?" I stared at him. A pastor?" I said. "Me?" He smiles. "Why not you? You know what it's like to be lost. You know what it's like to be found. You know the power of grace. That's what people need to hear. Not perfect theology, not polished sermons, just the truth, just Jesus. I didn't know what to say, but deep down, I felt it. The call, the same voice that had said, come, now saying, go. A few days later, something happened that I will never forget. I was sitting outside Pastor Dara's house, reading the Gospel of John, when I heard footsteps. I looked up and my heart stopped. It was Monk Bible. He was still wearing his saffron robe, but his face was different, thinner, tired. His eyes were red, like he hadn't slept in days. He stood there for a long moment, just looking at me. Then he said, I couldn't stop thinking about it. About what? I asked, standing. The Bible, he said. The verses you read. The things you said before you left. I tried to forget. I tried to go back to the way things were, but I couldn't. Because I know you're right, Sophal. I've known for a long time. I've just been too afraid to admit it. He reached into his robe and pulled out a small, worn book. The Bible, the same one I had found in the storage room. I kept reading it, he said, after you left in secret at night. And the more I read, the more I realize I've been teaching people a lie. Not because I wanted to, but because I didn't know any better. But now I do, and I can't keep pretending. Tears filled his eyes. Sophal, will you help me? Will you teach me? I want to follow Jesus, but I don't know how. I stepped forward and embraced him, both of us weeping. Yes, I said. Yes, I'll help you. And in that moment, I understood. This was why I had walked the unmarked road. This was why I had lost everything, so that others could find what I had found, so that the light could spread one heart at a time. You've been patient with me. You walked with me through the temple, through the vision, through the loss and the fear and the first trembling steps of faith. But I know what you've been waiting for. You want to know which two verses change everything. You want to know why those specific words out of all the words in the Bible had the power to shatter a worldview I had held my entire life. I'm going to tell you now, but first, I need you to understand something. It wasn't just the words themselves. It was the moment. It was the desperation I was carrying, the weight of unanswered prayers, the fear that I would never be good enough, that my grandmother would die without peace, that I would spend lifetime after lifetime trying to earn something I could never reach. It was the Holy Spirit preparing my heart, softening the soil, making me ready to receive what I had been blind to my whole life. The words were seeds, but the ground had to be broken first, and it was. So here they are, the two verses that undid me. The first one is from the Gospel of John, chapter 14, verse 6. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. I am the way, not a way. The way. When I read that, everything in me recoiled. Because in Buddhism, there are many paths, many teachers, many lifetimes, many methods. The goal is the same: enlightenment, liberation, escape from suffering, but the roads are endless. You do good deed, you meditate, you detach, you accumulate merit, you try and try and try, and maybe after countless rebirths, you finally reach nirvana. But Jesus didn't say, I am one option among many. He said, I am the way. Singular. Absolute. Exclusive. And that terrified me. Because if he was right, then everything else was wrong. If he was the only way to the Father, then all my prayers to the Buddha, all my offerings, all my striving had been aimed at the wrong destination. But it also gave me hope. Because if there was one way, then I didn't have to keep searching. I didn't have to keep guessing. I didn't have to wonder if I was on the right path or if I had missed a turn somewhere in a past life. I couldn't remember. The way was clear. The way was a person. And his name was Jesus. The second verse is from the book of Ephesians, chapter 2, verse 8 and 9. For by grace you have been saved through faith, and that not of yourselves. It is the gift of God, not of works, lest anyone should boast. By grace, not by works. When I read that, I stopped reading. Because my entire life had been about works, earning merit, doing good deeds, purifying my karma, trying to tip the scales in my favor so that maybe, just maybe, I could be reborn into a better life. But this verse say the opposite. It say salvation wasn't something I could earn. It was a gift, free, undeserved, given not because of what I had done, but because of what Jesus had done. And it said that it was not of works, lest anyone should boast. That lie broke me, because I realized I had been trying to boast, not out loud, not arrogantly, but in my heart, I had been trying to prove that I was good enough, that I was worthy, that I deserved to be saved. And this verse told me I couldn't. None of us could. That's why Jesus came. To do what we couldn't do. To pay a debt we couldn't pay. To offer a gift we couldn't earn. Grace. I sat there in the storage room of the temple, the Bible open in my lap, tears streaming down my face, and I whispered, I receive it. I received the gift. And everything changed. The weight lifted. The striving stopped. The fear dissolved, because I wasn't trying to save myself anymore. I was letting Jesus save me. Now, I know some of you are thinking, that's it? Just 2 verses? That's what made you abandon Buddhism and become a Christian? And the answer is yes. But also no, because it wasn't just the verses. It was everything that came after. It was the vision of the man in white. It was the voice that called my name. It was the peace that flooded my soul when I surrendered. It was the way the Bible came alive as I kept reading, like every page was written for me, like Jesus was speaking directly into the deepest parts of my heart. It was the community that welcomed me when I had nowhere else to go. It was the transformation I saw in my own life. The way anger turned to peace, fear turned to courage, despair turned to hope. It was a monk Bible standing in front of me with tears in his eye, holding the same Bible, saying, I believe. It was my grandmother. 3 days after I read her those 2 verses, she passed away. But before she did, she whispered something to my mother. My mother told me later, her voice shaking. She said, Neely's last words were, I believe. Tell Sophal, I believe. Grace reached her in her final moments, not because she had done enough, but because Jesus had. And now I want to show you something. I still have the Bible. The one the Western aid workers left at the temple, the one monk Bible hid, the one I found and read in secret. I carried it with me for over 20 years. The cover is worn. The pages are thin and fragile. Some of the text has faded, but the two verses are still there. And if you look closely, you can still see the smudge of ash in the margin. The mark I made that night when I wanted to remember, when I needed proof that the moment was real. I carry this Bible with me everywhere. When I preach, when I counsel, when I visit villages and share the gospel with people who have never heard the name of Jesus, I hold it up and I say, this is the book that set me free. These are the verses that changed my life, and they can change yours too. Because here's the truth. It doesn't matter if you are Buddhist, Hindu, Muslim, atheist, or something else. It doesn't matter how many good deeds you've done or how many mistakes you made. It doesn't matter if you spend your whole life trying to earn your way to God, or if you've given up trying altogether. Jesus is still the way. Grace is still free. And the gift is still being offered. All you have to do is receive it. Monk Bible did. He left the temple 6 months after I did. He was baptized in a river surrounded by the same community that had welcomed me. And today, he served as a pastor in a neighboring province, sharing the gospel with other monks and temple workers who are searching for the truth. The unmarked road we used to walk is still there. But now, when I walk it, I'm not walking toward a statue that can't hear me. I'm walking with Jesus, the one who called my name, the one who say, I am the way. And I'm inviting others to walk with me. That's what I've been doing for the past 2 decades. Pastoring, teaching, preaching, sharing my testimony with anyone who will listen. And I've seen it happen over and over again. The same thing that happened to me. People who were striving, searching, drowning in the weight of their own effort, encountering Jesus and discovering grace for the first time. Farmers, students, former monks, mothers, fathers, children, and one by one, the light spread, not because I'm eloquent, not because I have all the answers, but because the gospel is true, and truth has a way of breaking through, even in the darkest places, even in the most religious hearts, even in a Buddhist temple in rural Cambodia. So let me ask you, are you carrying a weight you were never meant to carry? Are you trying to earn something that's already been given? Are you walking a road that leads nowhere when the way is standing right in front of you, calling your name? If you are, I want you to know, you don't have to keep striving. You don't have to keep performing. You don't have to be good enough, because Jesus already is, and His grace is enough for you, for me, for everyone. If the reveal and the Bible I still carry, marked with ash from that night, answer a question you've been holding in your heart, leave one word in the comments that capture what you're feeling right now. Hope, peace, freedom, whatever it is, your word might be the encouragement someone else needs to take the next step. And if this testimony stirred something deep in you, subscribe. Because there are others out there still walking the unmarked road, still searching, and they need to hear this. Let's make sure they find it. The saffron robe I used to wear, I burn it. Not out of anger, but as an act of worship, a symbol of surrender, a declaration that I was no longer trying to save myself. The lotus flowers I used to offer, I don't offer them anymore because I've received a greater offering, the body and blood of Jesus given for me, and the unmarked robe is not unmarked anymore because Jesus is the way and He's made the path clear. All we have to do is follow. I'm writing this now from a small church in Kampong Thom province. It's not much wooden walls, a tin roof, benches made from salvage planks, no stained glass, no grand architecture, no bells or spire reaching toward heaven. But it's full. Every Sunday, people gather here. Former Buddhists, seekers, believers, families who have walked away from the temples and toward the cross. And every Sunday, I stand in front of them with the same worn Bible in my hand, the one marked with ash, and I preach the gospel. The gospel of grace, the gospel of Jesus, the gospel that set me free. I never imagined this would be my life. 20 years ago, I was a novice in a saffron robe, sweeping temple floor, chanting sutras, trying to earn my way to enlightenment. I thought that was my destiny. But God had other plans. He called me by name. He showed me the way, and He gave me a new purpose. Not to perform, not to strive, but to point others to the one who has already done the work, to Jesus. I think about my grandmother often, about her question, have I done enough? And I think about her last word, I believe. She didn't have time to do more good deeds. She didn't have time to accumulate more merit. She didn't have time to live another life. But she had time to receive grace, and that was enough. That's the beauty of the gospel. It's never too late. As long as you have breath, you have time to say yes to Jesus, to receive the gift, to step onto the way. I also think about Monk Bible, about the fear in his eyes when he first read the Bible, about the courage it took for him to walk away from everything he knew, about the joy on his face when he was baptized. He's older now. His health isn't what it used to be, but he's still preaching, still teaching, still sharing the same two verses that changed both of our lives. And I think about you. Whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever role you've been walking. Maybe you, like I was, religious, devoted, trying so hard to be good enough, but never feeling like you've done enough. Maybe you're tired of striving, tired of performing, tired of carrying a weight you were never meant to carry. Or maybe you are not religious at all. Maybe you've given up on God entirely because you thought He was distant, silent, uninterested in your pain. Whoever you are, I want you to know, Jesus sees you. He knows your name, and He's calling you not to a system, not to a set of rules, not to a lifetime of earning and striving and hoping you eventually be good enough. He's calling you to Himself, to grace, to freedom, to life. I'm not asking you to abandon your culture or your family or your identity. I'm asking you to meet the one who created you, the one who loves you, the one who died for you and rose again. If you've never read the Bible before, I want to invite you to start not with the whole thing, not all at once. Just start with the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. Read about Jesus, His life, His word, His love, His sacrifice. And as you read, ask Him to reveal Himself to you. The way He revealed Himself to me, He will, I promise you, He will, because He's not hiding. He's not silent. He's not distant. He's right there, waiting, with His hand extended, calling your name. All you have to do is reach out and receive the gift of grace, the gift of life, the gift of Jesus. I don't know what it will cost you. For me, it's cost my family, my home, my identity. For Monk Bible, it cost his position, his security, his reputation. For my grandmother, it cost nothing because she had nothing left to give. But whatever it costs, is worth it, because what you gain is infinitely greater than what you lose. You gain peace that doesn't depend on your performance. You gain hope that doesn't fade with time. You gain love that you don't have to earn. You gain Jesus, and He is enough. He has always been enough. He will always be enough. So I'll leave you with this, the same two verses that changed my life. Read them slowly. Let them sink in. And if they stir something in your heart, don't ignore it. That's the Holy Spirit calling you, drawing you, inviting you home. I am the way, the truth, and the light. No one come to the Father except through me. Jesus, John 14:2-6. For by grace you have been saved through faith, and that not of yourself. It is the gift of God, not of works, lest anyone should boast. Ephesians 2:8-9. The road is no longer unmarked. He is the way, and He's waiting for you.